Another technique or another method that maybe some of you guys might resonate with, one that we don't see that often, but it still works, is this idea of factoring by grouping. And we've done grouping before, but this one we're going to try to turn it into something that we're going to factor by grouping. And the technique goes similar to this. I'm going to be aware of what the first term times the second term is, produces a negative 12. So I want to find out, well, what are some factors that make a negative 12? And so factors that make a negative 12 are a negative 4 and a positive 3. Um, Another factors that make a negative 12 would be what? A negative 12 and a positive 1, and I guess 6s and 2 as well. And on their counter verses. Now I want to choose one of these in the right order that's going to give me a negative 1. And you recognize right now that minus 4 plus 3 produces negative 1. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to use that to rewrite this middle term as the summation of those terms. So I'm going to rewrite it as 2x squared plus 4x, or sorry, minus 4x. I knew it didn't look right for a second. Minus 4x plus a 3x minus a 6. Now, if I did this step going backwards, I think everybody would be fine with it. 2x squared minus 4x plus 3x minus 6, collect the like terms, I've got a negative x. So if I went upwards, you would be fine with this. I'm going downwards, which meant I'm resplitting negative x into a negative 4x and a positive 3x. And the reason why I chose those two is because I wanted these to be factors of 12, and both 4 and 3 are a factor of 12. All right, well, so what's the big deal? If I get that, which I don't think I do, but if I did, so what? Well, now we can group. So let's group the first pair and the second pair. What do I pull out here? I can pull a 2x, and then what's left is an x minus a 2. On the second one, let's pull out a 3, and what's left is an x minus a 2. Now I can continue to factor something out from both of these terms, an x minus 2. I can factor out, and then what's left is a 2x plus a 3. And there's a factorization of 2x squared minus x minus 6. Now, this has its advantages, but it takes us some time again to practice this to see what's going on. And so I challenge you, if you want another method that might be easier without having to look in a lot of places or reduce that down, give this a shot. But it's going to take time to get the hang of this tool. But I think some of you guys can do it. All right, let's try it again. Let's see if this factoring by grouping thing works. So how we start with is we're looking for 8 times 5. The product at the end is 40. So what are all the factors that go into 40? 1 and 40 are factors that go into that. 2 and 20 go into that. 5 and 8. And there might be a few more. Now it's also the negative versions as well. So plus or minus, plus or minus, plus or minus. So do any of those, if I'm in the right configuration, add to a negative 22? And a negative 2 and a negative 20 does. They both add or multiply to a 40, which is my last terms, but I add gives me to a negative 22. So let's rewrite negative 22x then as 8x squared minus 2x minus 20x plus a 5. Notice that my middle terms, if I were to collect them, they would add to a negative 22. Now we have a classic grouping situation up, except I have this middle negative term, so I need to rewrite it as 8x squared minus 2x plus a negative 20x plus a 5. From there, I can group. In the first grouping, what do you want to factor out? Yeah, let's factor out a 2x. Why not? Factor out a 2x, and what's left is a 4x minus a 1 And on this next one, what do you want to factor out? Let's factor out a -5. And then what's left? It looks like a 4x minus a 1. Cool. Factor 4x out of both, or 4x minus 1 from both of these terms. I'm left with a 4x minus 1. And what's left is a 2x minus a 5. And there's my factorization by using this other method by factoring by grouping.